In the summer of 1975, thousands of Americans stood in shopping malls holding tiny white cups. Inside them were two mystery drinks. One was Coca-Cola, the other was Pepsi. And something shocking happened. Again and again, people chose Pepsi. For Coca-Cola, it felt impossible. Coke wasn't just a drink, it was America itself. Baseball games, family dinners, road trips under the hot sun. But suddenly, a younger rival was daring to ask a dangerous question. What if the king isn't king anymore? Behind the bright ads and smiling celebrities was a brutal corporate war, a battle worth billions of dollars. A war fought through marketing tricks, secret formulas, and one of the biggest business mistakes in modern history. Welcome to Index of History. Today, we're telling the story of Pepsi, the underdog that challenged an empire, changed advertising forever, and helped create one of the fiercest rivalries the world has ever seen. And by the 1980s, this rivalry would become so intense that Coca-Cola itself would panic.
Pepsi didn't begin with power, it began with desperation. In the late 1800s, a pharmacist named Caleb Bradham worked inside a small drugstore in Newbern. Like many pharmacists of his time, he mixed drinks by hand behind a soda counter. Customers came in for cold beverages, medicine, and conversation. America was changing fast. Factories were growing, cities were expanding, and people wanted cheap pleasures that made daily life feel lighter. Bradham created a sweet drink made from sugar, vanilla, caramel, and rare oils. At first, he called it Brad's drink. It was simple, refreshing, easy to enjoy on a hot afternoon. Then he renamed it Pepsi-Cola. The name sounded energetic, modern, scientific even. And for a moment, it seemed like the dream was becoming real. Pepsi spread beyond the drugstore. Bottles appeared in nearby towns. Bradham believed he could compete with the giant already rising across America, Coca-Cola. But success can disappear very quickly. In the early 20th century, sugar prices exploded after World War I. Bradham made a risky decision. He bought huge amounts of sugar, believing prices would keep rising. Instead, the market crashed. Overnight, the company was buried in debt. Pepsi went bankrupt, not once, but twice. For years, Pepsi looked cursed. Owners changed, money vanished. Coca-Cola kept growing stronger while Pepsi struggled just to survive. Most companies would have disappeared forever. Investors lost hope, competitors laughed, and during the Great Depression, Americans had little money to waste on soft drinks. But Pepsi discovered something powerful during hard times. Price mattered. While Coca-Cola sold a small bottle for 5 cents, Pepsi offered almost double the amount for the same price. Their jingle echoed across radios in the 1930s. Pepsi-Cola hits the spot. It was catchy, impossible to ignore. Families struggling through the Depression suddenly saw Pepsi as the smarter choice. Not luxury, value. And slowly, the forgotten company came back to life. But Pepsi's biggest weapon wasn't the drink itself. It was something far more dangerous, understanding young people before anyone else did. And that would change everything in America.
By the 1950s, America looked confident on the surface. New suburbs stretched across the country. Televisions filled living rooms. Cars grew larger every year. And Coca-Cola stood at the center of that shiny American dream. It was safe, familiar, traditional. But younger Americans were beginning to feel different from their parents. Teenagers suddenly had spending money, new music, and their own culture. Rock and roll exploded through radios. Hollywood changed fashion overnight. The younger generation didn't want to look backward anymore. They wanted something that felt fresh. Pepsi saw the shift before Coca-Cola did. Instead of fighting Coke as another cola, Pepsi reinvented itself as the drink of youth. In the 1960s, the company launched a campaign that would change advertising forever, the Pepsi generation. It was brilliant because Pepsi wasn't selling flavor alone, it was selling identity.
Their commercials showed smiling young people dancing on beaches, driving convertibles, laughing under the summer sun. Pepsi became tied to freedom, energy, and modern life. If Coke represented parents and tradition, Pepsi represented the future. And the strategy worked. Young Americans began choosing Pepsi not because they hated Coke, but because Pepsi felt like their drink. Inside Coca-Cola headquarters, executives watched nervously. Coke still dominated the market, but something uncomfortable was happening. Pepsi was becoming culturally powerful, cooler, younger. Then Pepsi pushed even harder. In the 1980s, they signed one of the most famous entertainers on earth, Michael Jackson. The commercials were explosive, crowds screaming, bright lights, pop music everywhere. Pepsi suddenly felt less like a soda company and more like the center of global pop culture. Millions of young fans followed. Then came celebrities like Madonna and Britney Spears. Pepsi understood something simple but powerful. People don't just buy products, they buy emotions, status, belonging. And while Pepsi looked exciting and modern, Coca-Cola began to appear old-fashioned. That fear inside Coca-Cola kept growing. Executives studied sales reports constantly. They needed a response, fast. So Pepsi decided to attack directly. Not through music, not through celebrities, but through taste itself. And that challenge would lead Coca-Cola into one of the biggest disasters in business history. In 1975, Pepsi launched a marketing campaign that looked simple on the surface. A table, 2 cups, 1 question. Which drink tastes better? People across America took blind taste tests without knowing which cola they were drinking. Cameras rolled as ordinary Americans pointed again and again to the same choice: Pepsi. The company called it the Pepsi Challenge. For Pepsi, it was a perfect attack. Coca-Cola had spent decades building emotional loyalty, family memories, patriotism, tradition. But Pepsi shifted the battlefield completely. Suddenly, the argument became personal and immediate: taste. And television made the moment feel humiliating for Coca-Cola. Millions watched surprised customers choose Pepsi on camera. The message was dangerous because it sounded scientific and honest. Even worse, many younger consumers believed it. Inside Coca-Cola, panic slowly spread. Executives had always trusted one thing above all else: the formula. Coke's recipe was treated almost like a national treasure, protected, secret, untouchable. But Pepsi's challenge planted doubt in the public mind. What if Coke didn't actually taste better? For years, Coca-Cola studied consumer reactions obsessively. Researchers ran test after test, and eventually, the company made a shocking decision. They would change Coca-Cola itself. In 1985, Coca-Cola introduced New Coke. The new formula was sweeter, designed partly to compete more directly with Pepsi's flavor profile. Executives believed they were making a smart, modern move. Internal taste tests seemed positive. The company expected excitement. Instead, America exploded with anger. Customers called radio stations in fury. Protest groups formed. People bought old Coke bottles in bulk and stored them in their homes. Some consumers spoke about the drink almost emotionally, as if part of their childhood had been stolen. Coca-Cola had misunderstood something massive. People weren't only drinking Coke for the flavor. They were drinking memory, identity, tradition. And by changing the formula, the company accidentally attacked its own history. Meanwhile, Pepsi celebrated publicly. To them, it looked like total victory. The giant had blinked first. But behind closed doors, Coca-Cola moved quickly. Only 79 days later, the original formula returned under a new name: Coca-Cola Classic. Crowds cheered, newspapers treated it like national news, and strangely enough, Coca-Cola became stronger after the disaster. But the cola wars were far from over, because by the 1990s, Pepsi wasn't trying to beat Coca-Cola only in supermarkets anymore. It wanted to dominate global culture itself. By the 1990s, the Cola Wars had grown far beyond soda. Pepsi and Coca-Cola were now fighting for attention everywhere. Television, sports, music, fast food, even international politics. Their logos appeared in nearly every corner of modern life. What began as a battle between two drinks had become a fight over culture itself. Pepsi leaned harder into entertainment. Its commercials became huge productions, filled with celebrities, athletes, and pop stars. During the Super Bowl, millions waited not only for the game, but for the Pepsi ads. The company understood that younger audiences were changing again. Attention spans were shorter, media was louder, image mattered more than ever. At the same time, Pepsi expanded far beyond cola. The company bought snack brands, sports drinks, and fast food chains. It wasn't just selling beverages anymore. It was building an empire connected to everyday life. Coca-Cola remained larger globally, but Pepsi had carved out something unique. It became the challenger brand, the company willing to take risks, move faster, and speak directly to younger generations. Still, the rivalry sometimes became deeply personal. Executives from both companies monitored each other constantly. Ads mocked the competition openly. Employees switched sides like athletes changing teams. Every market share report felt like a battlefield update. And then came globalization. As American brands spread across the world, Pepsi and Coca-Cola entered new countries almost like rival armies. In some places, owning a bottle of American soda represented freedom and modern culture. During the late Cold War, Pepsi even became one of the first American consumer products widely sold inside the Soviet Union. For millions of people, these drinks weren't just beverages anymore. They were symbols. Capitalism, Western culture, youth, globalization. That's what made the Cola Wars so fascinating. The conflict was never truly about sugar water. It was about emotion, about how companies shape identity and memory. Even today, the rivalry continues quietly. Some people remain loyal to Coke forever. Others defend Pepsi passionately. Families argue about it at restaurants. Friends debate it online. And after more than a century, the battle still hasn't fully ended. Because once a brand becomes part of someone's life story, logic alone rarely changes their mind.
The story of Pepsi isn't really about soda. It's about understanding people. Again and again, Pepsi survived because it recognized emotional shifts before its rivals did. During the Great Depression, people wanted value. In the 1960s, young Americans wanted identity. In the 1980s, audiences wanted excitement and celebrity culture. Pepsi adapted constantly, and that kept the company alive against a much larger opponent. But Coca-Cola's survival revealed something important too. People don't only buy products because of taste or price. They buy memories, habits, feelings connected to family, childhood, and identity. That's why New Coke failed so dramatically. Coca-Cola forgot that some brands become emotional symbols, almost like part of a person's history. And maybe that's the real reason the Cola Wars never truly ended. Both companies learned how to connect themselves to human emotion in completely different ways. One sold tradition, the other sold change. So now the question passes to you. If you had to choose only one forever, Pepsi or Coke, which side would you pick and why? Thanks for watching Index of History.